We are incredibly lucky that Earth is located near a stable star and has the necessary conditions that allow people to live on it comfortably. But is it really that bad on other planets? What if there is life not only on Earth? Are there places that are even more suitable for existence? For example, traces of extraterrestrial life were recently discovered on Saturn's moon Enceladus. Scientists found methane in its geysers, which most likely confirms the presence of life on Enceladus. Or maybe it's just abiotic processes or thermochemical reactions. But there's so much methane in Enceladus's geysers that such an amount can't be explained by non-biological origins. Scientists conducted a series of studies, but they still couldn't explain where so much methane in Saturn's moon's geysers comes from, especially since its reserves are constantly being replenished and escaping into space. However, everything falls into place if we assume the presence of microbes there, similar to those found in hydrothermal vents on Earth. Scientists believe that enough hydrogen is produced on Enceladus to support such microbes, and the temperature remains at a comfortable level for them. So, is there life on Enceladus? No one is ready to say that with 100% certainty. They say that complex deep-sea missions are needed, which are expected in the next few decades. A similar story happened with Venus. Phosphine gas was found in the clouds of this planet, which is produced only industrially or by microbes living in an oxygen-free environment. When scientists got the first hints of phosphine in Venus's spectrum, they were so shocked that they couldn't believe their luck for a long time. How can the presence of this gas be explained? There were suspicions that phosphine could have entered the atmosphere as a result of non-biological processes, but it turned out that all non-biological sources produce at most 1/10,000th of the amount of phosphine detected by the telescopes. Phosphine, or more precisely phosphorus hydride, is a poisonous gas that has no color and is very rarely found in nature. It is usually released during manufacturing chemical reactions, lightning strikes, or volcanic activity, but not in the large quantities in which it was found on Venus. So how did it end up there? Most likely as a result of the activity of bacteria that live in an oxygen-free environment. This version seems the most likely to astronomers, although they do not rule out that they might have missed something. And perhaps there is some other explanation for where so much phosphine came from on Venus. At the same time, research fellow of the Space Research Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Natan Eismont, is convinced that Venus has the greatest likelihood of discovering life. For this purpose, the Venera D project has already been approved. But why are such high hopes being placed on Venus in particular? According to Eismont, it's because Earth and Venus are very similar. They have similar mass and size. But will the search for life on Venus be successful? Most likely no. After all, even in the atmosphere where phosphine was discovered, the air is extremely dry and acidic, with almost no water. In addition, Venus is almost 1.5 times closer to the Sun than our planet, and its surface is too hot for any forms of life to exist there. The average temperature there is about 460 degrees Celsius, and even lead melts under such conditions. This means that if astronauts travel to Venus in the future, they will first dissolve in sulfuric acid and then be poisoned by toxic phosphine. If there are any creatures living there, we won't find out about them anytime soon. However, scientists are confident that there was a time when Venus had a much milder climate, and its surface was most likely covered by oceans where life could have originated. However, the strong greenhouse effect dried up the oceans, and now only microorganisms might still exist there. What about other planets? Maybe there are more suitable conditions for life somewhere else? In 2020, British scientists discovered that Jupiter's atmosphere is more humid than Venus's. Of course, the harsh conditions on the planet's surface leave no chance for even the most resilient forms of life to exist there. But recent scientific discoveries keep the question of the possibility of life on this planet open. The fact is that sulfur dioxide was found in Jupiter's clouds, and the droplets contain a fairly large amount of water. If we assume that there are nutrients there, then microbial life could very well exist in Jupiter's clouds, and maybe not just microbial life, at least on Jupiter's moon Europa. There is a suspicion that beneath the thick layer of ice on this small moon, alien life could be hidden. Data from telescopes and spacecraft give us reason to believe that Europa may be hiding a global ocean from us, kept from freezing by the solar system. Who else could live there besides microbes? Monica Grady, the rector of Liverpool University, tends to believe that Europa may boast more advanced life than Mars. Thanks to its warm subsurface ocean, the living conditions on Jupiter's moon are more comfortable and may provide better chances for survival. In addition, organic substances rise from the interior of the moon, which can be used as food. If this is really the case, future colonists may well encounter much more advanced forms of life than previously thought. There is an opinion that the intelligence of some inhabitants of Europa may correspond, for example, to the level of a squid or an octopus. What if mermaids or amphibious beings live in Europa's ocean and we just don't know? They feed on the creatures that live there and dwell in their underwater homes. There are no answers to these questions yet, but experts tend to believe that life forms similar to humans are unlikely to emerge in the vicinity of Jupiter. This is due to the lack of light in the deep ocean and the immense ice pressure. Inside the dwarf planet Cerera, there is also a real sea. Scientists came to this conclusion after studying the emissions from the cryovolcano Quaoar, located on Cerera. Cryovolcanoes are a specific type of volcano found on planets and celestial bodies with extremely low temperatures. Instead of hot lava, they erupt a mixture of water, ammonia, and methane. According to scientists, cryovolcanoes indicate the presence of water inside the planet Cerera. Deposits of sodium carbonate have also been discovered on the surface of the planet. Paul Schenk from the Lunar and Planetary Institute believes that the similarity of certain processes on Mars, Earth, and Cerera may indicate favorable conditions for the emergence of microorganisms. In his opinion, life simply had to emerge on water-rich Mars and Earth. After studying the cartography of this dwarf planet, Paul Schenk discovered similar deposits in the area of the Akator crater. Some elements are the most common in the universe. These are hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, silicon, and iron. They are essential for the existence of organic life. In particular, humans need water they can drink, air they can breathe, and a planet whose surface they can walk on. If all these components were able to come together on Earth once and start the processes necessary for the development of intelligent life, then why can't it happen elsewhere? Also, on one of the hundreds of billions of exoplanets that exist just in our galaxy, according to the laws of statistics, life simply had to originate not only on Earth. The only question is whether we will discover it, and if we do, what actions will follow after that. Over the past 30 years, astronomers have discovered more than 4,000 exoplanets, planets that are outside the solar system. Most of them orbit their own stars. Many of the discovered exoplanets are composed of the same elements as the planets of the solar system. There are only minor differences. Some have more water and ice, while others contain more iron and carbon. However, there isn't a single planet that resembles Earth or any other bodies in the solar system. However, there are also so-called terrestrial planets. For example, TRAPPIST-1d is the third planet from its star, like Earth, and its soil may resemble ours. This object is also located in the habitable zone, an area where the amount of heat from the star is sufficient for liquid water to exist on the surface. Now let's take a look at TRAPPIST-1, whose mass is 60% that of our Earth. Remarkably, a year here lasts only 6.1 days. An interesting fact is that the density of this planet is several times greater than that of Earth. It's all due to a denser iron core, which may be the reason why the planet's atmosphere is thinner. And that means the presence of oceans on the planet is questionable. However, TRAPPIST-1 most closely matches our Earth in terms of size and the amount of energy that circulates here and comes from the local star. Could intelligent life exist here? So far, we don't have enough computing power to study these planets in more detail. However, astrophysicist Andre Mater from the Geneva Observatory believes that in the search for life in the universe, we are more likely to find bacteria than an intelligent civilization or Star Wars. The emergence of such a civilization requires time as well as stable basic physical conditions. Earth had such privileges, and not only those. For example, the moon provided an ideal climate, and the gas giant Jupiter attracts almost all the asteroids flying into the solar system. Without Jupiter, Earth would experience catastrophes like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, much more often. So for now, the facts only suggest that if there are any extraterrestrial inhabitants out there, they are single-celled, at least in the solar system. Or maybe we just missed intelligent beings in time and space. Wherever you are right now, whether it's in the scorching heat of Africa, among the harsh archipelagos of the Arctic Ocean, or in the mystical Himalayas, look up at the sky. It's adorned with a luxurious necklace of trillions of stars, but there's one spot unrelated to the shining lights that can't be seen with the naked eye. It's a man-made object, the only artificial device that's the farthest from Earth. We're talking about the American space probe Odin, launched in 1977. Do you think it's been silent for a long time? You're mistaken. The probe is still sending signals to Earth, and sometimes they puzzle astronomers all over the world. For example, recently I heard a steady hum of unknown origin. What could that mean? Astrophysicists are still puzzled. What tasks is Voyager 1 supposed to accomplish, and where is it now? The main mission of the spacecraft was to study the giant planets Jupiter and Saturn. It is worth noting that Voyager 1 accomplished its goal excellently. It was Voyager 1 that gave the world detailed images of these enormous celestial bodies made of swirling gas, as well as their rocky moons. But that was just the first stage. The most difficult part was still ahead for the probe, and it began this crucial task only relatively recently. A huge responsibility was placed on one to study the Kuiper Belt and the boundaries of the Heliosphere. But how can the collected data be interpreted if no one has ever been to such distant regions of space from Earth before? In a way, it's like traveling with an incomplete guidebook, where the vast majority of information is simply missing. It was there, billions of miles from our home planet, that I discovered a persistent hum coming from an unknown source, which most likely originated from interstellar space. In 4 decades of travel, the spacecraft had recorded various signals, but this was the first of its kind. And considering that I am literally exploring locations by touch, places where the entire solar system, led by its star, will eventually arrive, the information obtained becomes especially relevant. Would you like to learn more about the subject of my research? Our planetary community, led by the parent star, is located in a global bubble called the Heliosphere. Under the protection of this invisible shell are all the planets of the solar system, along with the Kuiper Belt. It reliably shields these objects from the aggressive interstellar environment. So what is the Heliosphere, and what are its characteristics? It's a vast region where the solar wind plasma moves at supersonic speeds. At the boundary with interstellar space, the solar wind collides with the plasma magnetic field of outer space. To put it simply, The solar wind accelerates to high speeds, twists into a spiral, and then suddenly slows down as it hits an invisible barrier and gradually mixes with cosmic particles. It is currently located in the event horizon region, which means it was there that the probe detected a mysterious signal. How difficult was the journey of the spacecraft before it reached the outskirts of the solar system? Where did the probe travel and what stages has it already overcome? In 2004, it crossed the shockwave boundary, a region of the heliosphere where the solar wind begins to slow down significantly, anticipating its encounter with interstellar matter. How did scientists on Earth learn about this? Of course, the conclusions are based on the readings from the spacecraft's instruments. Yes, as mentioned earlier, after 43 years, it is still sending signals, although not all the sensors on board are working properly. Anyway, let's continue. Beyond the shock wave lies the heliopause, where the solar wind finally calms down and mixes with the matter of deep space. The structure described is known to astronomers indirectly, since apart from Voyager 1, no other inhabitant of Earth has ventured so far into the impenetrable darkness of the universe. That makes its message even more valuable to us. For example, there is a hypothesis that between the boundary of the solar system called the bow shock and the region following the heliosphere, there is a hydrogen wall filled with hot gas. Wasn't its hum transmitted to us? The signal consists of vibrations in a certain frequency band and could very well serve as confirmation of this theory. Unfortunately, it's impossible to measure the pressure and density of the plasma, as well as its temperature, because the instruments stopped working at 1 back in 1980, 3 years after launch. But the other instruments are still operational. Scientists rely on them. The plasma wave instrument and the cosmic ray detector are still diligently sending us information. Thanks to the latter, it was possible to record an increase in the level of cosmic rays and high-energy electrons when one was approaching the boundary of the heliosphere, which he successfully crossed on August 25, 2012. According to scientists' predictions, the spacecraft will be sending signals at least until 2025. The probe's power supply is provided by radioisotope generators running on plutonium-238. At the moment, their power has decreased by half. Let's return to the mysterious hum detected by the equipment. What other hypotheses, besides the ones already mentioned, do scientists consider to explain this strange phenomenon? The fact is that similar vibrations are also caused by plasma waves of various origins. For example, they can be triggered by large solar flares. Some astronomers suggest that the space at the boundary between the solar system and outer space has a structure similar to foam. This happens because small cosmic objects form small spheres around themselves, similar to magnetic bubbles. It is possible that this also leads to the appearance of strange vibrations, which are detected in. By the way, the sound of the mentioned signal is similar to a distant ringing, periodically interrupted by strange irregular bursts reminiscent of bell strikes. It gives the absurd impression that someone is sitting astride the space probe and banging on its hull. Has the Earth spacecraft left the boundaries of the solar system for good? Not at all. National Aeronautics and Space Administration estimates this will occur in about 30,000 years. Right now, the probe is going through its own circles of cosmic hell, but unlike Dante's Divine Comedy satellite, the spacecraft is completely alone and has no companion whatsoever. The boundaries of the solar system extend much farther than the Kuiper Belt and even the heliosphere. It will take about 3 centuries, and Voyager 1 will plunge into the Oort cloud if it actually exists and is not just in the imagination of scientists, since no one has ever actually seen this formation. It is believed that the comets that sometimes enter the solar system are actually visitors from this very cloud. What will happen next? As soon as Voyager 1 leaves the boundaries of the Titanic Thor, the spacecraft will embark on an eternal journey through the Milky Way, and we are unlikely to ever learn of its fate. Unless the golden record with Earth's sounds and other information falls into the hands of extraterrestrial civilizations. Unfortunately, modern astronomy is in many ways like reading tea leaves, although, of course, the science of stars has advanced significantly compared to previous centuries. It's hard to imagine what else one could find on the edge of the solar system. Most importantly, how do we interpret these signals? For now, the probe is about 20 billion kilometers from Earth, cutting through space at a speed of 60,000 kilometers per hour. Its research is very valuable for science because thanks to it, we can lift the veil of mystery a little and learn what interstellar space is made of and how it behaves in its natural environment. In addition, this will allow us to take past mistakes into account when designing new probes, which will be even faster and more reliable. In the meantime, Zond 1 literally has ringing in its ears. Let's appreciate the comfortable conditions on Earth and the ability to easily get any information about the vastness of space without leaving our favorite couch. Our beautiful planet is not the only one in the universe. You know that, don't you? Celestial bodies, like people, differ from each other in behavior, appearance, and size. Are you familiar with the phrase, everything is known by comparison? It fits planets perfectly. For example, an object that seems huge to us may look insignificant next to a larger celestial body. Or a dwarf planet turns into a giant among much smaller companions. The second example fits Voyager perfectly, a celestial body located in the Kuiper Belt and classified as a trans-Neptunian object. A small, very distant point from Earth was spotted in the sky by Ched Trukili and Mike Brown in the summer of 2002. But later it was also discovered in astronomical archives dating back to 1954. 7 months of painstaking observations preceded the scientific sensation. The news was announced on October 7th of the same year at a meeting of the American Astronomical Society. What makes this object remarkable is that Quaoar surprises you as soon as you hear its name. Where does such a strange name come from? The fact is that the small planet was discovered using a telescope at a private California observatory located on Mount Palomar in San Diego County. Previously, the indigenous Gabrielino people, or Tongva, lived in this area. One of the names of their supreme deity was Quaoar. That was the name given to the magical entity during the period when it reached the stars, meaning the highest level of enlightenment. Many people put the stress on the last syllable when pronouncing this name, which is not correct. In addition, in this form, it sounds similar to the term quasar, although the trans-Neptunian object has nothing to do with the cores of active galaxies. What else can the distant and mysterious Quaoar surprise us with? According to astronomers, this is a very dark and bluish-black world. The size of this celestial body is about 1,100 kilometers in diameter. That's about half the width of Pluto. Moreover, during the research, this number was revised downward several times. At the time of its discovery, it was the largest object in the Kuiper Belt. Even now, it remains in the top 10 along with Eris and Sedna. If we compare Quaoar to well-known celestial bodies, its size is roughly equal to Pluto's moon Charon. As for Earth, its size is 1/10 of Earth's diameter and 1/3 of the moon's. In 2016, Quaoar was captured by the cameras of New Horizons, flying more than 2 billion kilometers away from the celestial body. Through complex calculations, it was determined that the object has a round, planet-like orbit located 1.5 billion kilometers from Pluto. This world is made up of water ice and rocky boulders, and the familiar gases like methane, methanol, and carbon here transform into icy ridges. At the same time, scientists have repeatedly considered the possibility that Quaoar has a thin atmosphere with minimal pressure, consisting of methane, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen. To experience its aroma, get into a traffic jam and pull in behind an old truck. Later, astrophysicists revised their view, concluding the planetoid's atmosphere, if present, may be only methane. Otherwise, when Quaoar passes in front of a giant star, there should be a drop in its brightness. But nothing like that happened. Thus, among the possible gases, only methane remained. That's not certain. Active astronomical research, including with the scientific instruments of the Keck Observatory, has made it possible to identify one interesting feature of Quaoar. In 2004, an amorphous type of ice was discovered on it, which forms at a temperature of minus 160 degrees Celsius. What's so surprising about that, you may ask? A trans-Neptunian object is far from sources of heat and light, so naturally, it's extremely cold there. But what's strange is something else. Right now, the surface of the planet is even colder, minus 220 degrees. This raises the question, what could have heated the planet by 60 degrees, triggering the formation of specific amorphous ice? There are several hypotheses, including massive meteorite impacts and jet processes in the core of the celestial body that cause cryovolcanism. But the truth, most likely, we won't find out anytime soon. To which category of celestial bodies is Voyager classified? Is it a planet or not? Officially, it is classified as a classical trans-Neptunian object. Moreover, some scientists believe that further active searches will help discover much larger planetoids in the Kuiper belt. Other astronomers, however, claim that we are dealing with a dwarf planet. Quaoar has a satellite called Voyager. Naturally, the object was named after the son of the revered Native American deity. Voyager was discovered 4 years after Quaoar. The latest information was published in the Circular of the International Astronomical Union. The satellite orbits very close to the trans-Neptunian object, at just 14,500 kilometers. The diameter of Voyager is no more than 80 kilometers, and a year there lasts a mere 12 hours. How did such a small object get a satellite? Astronomers believe this resulted from an ancient collision with a massive body. But let's get back to Quaoar itself. How far is it from Earth? The object is located at a distance of about 42 astronomical units, or about 6 billion kilometers, which is much farther than Neptune and Pluto. Sunlight takes 5 hours to reach Quaoar. And on the legendary space shuttle, which has been launched multiple times from the Kennedy Space Center, it would take a quarter of a century to reach the object. In short, it's not a short journey. By analogy with distant Pluto, a year on this celestial body is impressive in terms of time records. It lasts 285 Earth years, which is almost 3 of our centuries. And a day lasts about 400 hours. And yet, can Quaoar be classified as a dwarf planet? Scientists are still deciding this question. Let's call it the most likely candidate for this vacant spot. Thanks to Quaoar, which was discovered first, other objects of the same nature and even larger ones were found. But it was this celestial body, named after a mythical deity, that started this process and made scientists consider expelling Pluto from the ranks of the traditional planets of the solar system. Let's recall the parameters by which a dwarf planet is identified and decide for ourselves whether Quaoar can be classified in this category. First, the object must orbit a star. This condition is met. Second, it is not allowed for the celestial body to be a satellite of a planet. And this point fits as well. Third, the object must maintain a spherical shape and sustain gravitational balance. Quaoar also meets the third criterion. Among other things, a dwarf planet is unable to clear its orbit of other objects, which is also one of its defining features. Ceres, Pluto, Haumea, Eris, and Makemake perfectly meet the mentioned requirements. Therefore, they were added to the International Astronomical Union's catalog. But for some reason, scientists aren't rushing with Quaoar. In addition to it, the list of candidates for the honorable status of dwarf planets includes Orcus, Salacia, Varda, Varuna, Ixion, Gong, and others. More than 40 objects in total. Quaoar's uncertain status may be due to limited study and astronomers' lack of confidence in the available data. Unfortunately, the New Horizons probe will not visit the future dwarf planet because it is too far from the spacecraft's flight path. Therefore, we can only hope that in the future, missions will be organized to help shed light on the mystery surrounding this trans-Neptunian object. Write to us about what status you would like to see Quaoar have, and also share your ideas on how it could be reached. We're looking forward to your subscriptions and shares. Travel through the universe with us.